This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states or situations.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Nerding Out on Neurodiversity, the podcast for all things neurodivergence. I'm Dr. Matt Zakreski, clinical psychologist and professional speaker, and I'm happy to be your host through the wild trails of the neurodivergent world.
And I'm Jake Noonan, educational coach and humanities teacher, your co-host and producer, and I'm thrilled to help share the stories and the experiences of wonderful people in the world of neurodiversity.
We're really excited for today's guest, which we are going to say a lot because we're always really excited about every guest we get. So let's get into it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Nerding Out on Neurodiversity. I'm your host, Dr. Matt. I am a clinical psychologist, author, professional speaker, podcast host, obviously, because you're here listening to me. And I am aware of many hats. With me, as always, is my dear friend, colleague, Jake Noonan, who today shall be known as the SME to my Dr. Hook. No, Captain Hook. Jake, fix that in post. You are the SME to my Captain Hook. Oh, good for him getting a doctorate. Jake, you want to say hi?
Yeah, it's great to be here as always. Dr. Matt, thank you for giving me the SME to your Dr. Hook. I will never think of Captain Hook as anything.
You're not going to fix that in post, are you? You're just going to leave that in there.
I'm just going to leave it. Because now I think that Captain Hook needs a doctorate, but then I'm like, what would the doctorate be in? And then for some reason I wanted to say like child development, child psychology, but I feel like that would be the complete opposite for him.
I was going like obvious. I would have said like oceanography. You know, the Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou, except the Life Aquatic with Dr. Hook, right? So... yeah, we are. Yes, we're off to a fabulous start. This is just really, really like par for the course for us. Before we go down yet another rabbit hole, let's introduce our fabulous guest today. And speaking of doctorates, we can say this is Dr. Jen Rafferty. Jen, do tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Hi, well, thank you so much for having me. I don't know where I would be in this Peter Pan analogy we're doing here, but I'm loving the Dr. Hook and Mr. Smee. I am the founder of Empowered Educator. I am also an author, a TEDx speaker, a mom of two, and at Empowered Educator, we support the social and emotional well-being of all of the adults in schools.
I mean, so important for many, many reasons. And I was on your podcast a while ago, and then every time I look up, you are somewhere spreading the gospel of Empowered Educator. So tell our listeners, like, where did that part of your professional identity come from? Because it's not what you started doing.
No, it's not what I started doing at all. I was a music teacher for about 15 years in Central New York, and I absolutely loved it. I, too, was a big theater nerd. I loved being on stage, and I loved being able to teach kids how to discover their voice and how to share it with other people. That's really what I was doing to change the world. And in December of 2019, felt like I was at the top of my career. I was conducting honors choirs across New York State. I was living my best nerd life, presenting about adolescent cognitive development and creating responsive classroom curriculum for general music classes. And then I ended up in a situation where my husband and I at the time decided we were going to get a divorce. I moved out of my house with my two kids who were 5 and 7 at the time, the same weekend that the world shut down in March of 2020. And everything changed for me because I thought that everything that I thought that I was no longer everything that I thought I was yesterday. I felt like I was no longer that person the next day. And while so many of us went through that personal and professional identity crisis during COVID, I had a little bit of extra special sauce there added on top. And that's when I really dove deep into the research of more neuroscience. I started my PhD in educational psychology, got a certification in emotional intelligence, and realized that teacher burnout wasn't anything new. We just couldn't ignore it anymore. And so I resigned from a job that I loved and started Empowered Educator in 2021. And here we are.
I mean, yeah, COVID wasn't easy for anyone, right? But I can't imagine being like, oh, and we're getting divorced. And by the way, the world shut down and go. So, I mean, Jen, like you said, there's no shortage of people out there talking about empowering educators and taking care of ourselves, but the thing that I've been struck with by you from the moment we met was like, oh, you've lived this. This isn't some ivory tower bullshit. Like, you guys should just do more self-care. We're talking mani-pedis. We're talking sleeping 8 hours a night. Like, you ask a single parent on this God's green earth, when was the last time you slept 8 hours in a night? Right? I was like, I might get 8 hours in a weekend. Right? I'm feeling solid about that.
Well, now that we're 40, we're also like getting up to go pee in the middle of the night too. So like that's never a thing anymore. If we're being honest.
Right. It's like instead of having Thanksgiving dinner, you have like piles of leftovers throughout the day and it sort of becomes Thanksgiving dinner. It's like, I had like some turkey and then I had some mashed potatoes and like in some total, it's 8 hours of sleep, but it's like weirdly choppy. Yes. Welcome to your future, Jake. Super fun stuff.
So excited. Can't wait.
It's great.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's why when you're in a room, and it's just like people look at you, they're like, oh no, yeah, she is of us. She is one of us. Where do you think that authenticity comes from?
Well, that's a great question. Where does that authenticity come from? I think for me, it was, first of all, getting really honest with myself about what was up and stop lying to myself about what I thought I was supposed to be doing and how I thought I was supposed to be feeling. The shame around that, my TED Talk clip that went viral for a reason. The hook there was, teachers are not superheroes. And that was a narrative that I subscribed to for most of my career because it felt great. Like I was a superhero. Yeah, I could do it all. But what it also meant was that it justified the chaos. It justified the pressure. And it made it as if, I never needed to take a day off. Taking a day off was for other people. That's not for me, because if that was something that I needed, then that was selfish. And superheroes are selfless. And what's true is superheroes are immortal. They are indestructible. And while teachers and educators are very much heroes in all of the ways, we are also human. And coming to face with our mortality, or I'll just talk for myself, if my mortality on this earth in that moment of crisis, particularly during COVID, when everything kind of went up in flames for me, that was an oh shit moment where I really needed to get real with who I was and who I wanted to be in this lifetime, and then build a very intentional bridge to get there. So the stories that I tell are mine. My journey is what I lived through. And I never, ever teach anything that I haven't tried myself.
And I've seen that clip probably 1,000 times. And every so often it like pops up on some other feed. And I'm like, I know her. I know her. And I think one of the ways in which you and I align, right, is that I also, one of my pet phrases is like, listen, I wouldn't tell you anything that I haven't tried myself. I have done the sweat equity here. I can tell you this thing works. There are a million guided meditations out there. The one I feel most comfortable teaching my clients is Leaves on a Stream, because I use that shit all the time. Every time I'm in an airport, I'm like, I'm Leaves on a Stream. I'm doing Leaves on a Stream, because especially these days with planes falling out of the sky, it's like I'm like just releasing my anxiety. Yeah, I think people really grok onto that. I remember seeing something similar, and this is sort of, we'll put on your mom hat for a second. Like, moms are superheroes too. It's like superheroes don't get paid. Superheroes are expected to just show up to work and take all the hits and take the bullets. And then we're like, wow, Superman, thanks. And roll credits, right? I think most people who call moms and teachers superheroes do so from a place of like emotional gratitude. They're like, yes, you are heroes, But there are people who will weaponize that against you because it's like, well, Superman never asks for a paycheck. Batman never asks for a day off. Wonder Woman doesn't say, guys, I've got cramps. I can't. There's a line from a Counting Crows song that's, you put your girl up on a pedestal and you wait for her to fall. And I feel like societally, that's the message we give for teachers. They're perfect and flawless and superheroes until they act like humans. And then it's like, heavens no.
Girl, don't even get me started with this.
Dish.
Yes, to all of that. That trope is, I would like to think, most of the time well-intended, but it is incredibly dangerous, not just for the women and the teachers in this world and the women and the teachers who are also moms in this world, but for all of our daughters and sons who are watching women become martyrs and step into this role of martyrdom for a cause that they believe wholeheartedly in moving forward. Like, we want to teach our kids, we want to create this reality of what we feel is our life's purpose, and that's beautiful. And we are sacrificing our own humanity by doing so. And it creates such cognitive dissonance for me because we're living in this place where we're expected to do it all, but don't have it all, be able to make sure that you have everything done, but don't ask for help. Just watch that beautiful clip from the Barbie movie at the end. I mean, she says it more beautiful than I could possibly do right now, but that sums it up. And these unrealistic expectations that we put on ourselves perpetuate the narrative. And unless we start talking about what's real, like let's have some real talk about this, nothing's ever going to change. And this isn't about burning it all down immediately. I had this beautiful conversation with Amelia Nagoski on my podcast, actually, who wrote Burnout, who is also a music teacher, by the way. She's a phenomenal music teacher.
I didn't know she was a music teacher.
Oh yeah. She's a professor. She teaches choral music. So she has this beautiful analogy. Hang on a second. I just lost my train of thought. I was so excited about it. Hold on.
That's what editing's for. You're okay.
No, I know. I told you about editing.
Oh yeah. You edit her.
I'm not going to edit you for that. Dr. Hook.
Oh yeah. Okay. I got it. And when I spoke to her, she creates such an important and potent picture of how when we ask for something, what does that mean about us then? And what it means is not that we're helpless or useless or don't have our shit together. What it means is that we're human. We're human. And the more that we connect to our humanity within ourselves first, the more we're able to do our jobs more efficiently, the more we're able to show up for our kids more compassionately and make our impact what we said we wanted to make in this world bigger. We can't do that when we're feeling so tied down with this role that we think we're supposed to be playing.
I did a workshop for a school down in Charlotte once, the Metrolina Regional Scholars Academy, an awesome school for gifted kids. And I was like, so look at this, this image, like teaching is a work of heart. And they're all like nodding. I'm like, yeah, you know what also teaching is? And they're like, what? I'm like, drastically underpaid. And they all stared at me. I'm like, guys, fundamental to my work as a psychologist, right, is that holding two different thoughts in your head at the same time. A dialectic thinking, like, yes, teacher is a work of heart, and we deserve to get paid what we're worth. Both of those things can be true. But, yes, if this was a audio-visual podcast, we would just clip the Barbie movie right now because that speech was incredible. But yeah, it's just impossible. And when we put people in impossible situations, they develop learned helplessness. They are much more likely to burn out. And then we wonder why people are leaving the profession in droves. We've created an unsustainable system while we keep asking them to do more and more and more and more.
Yeah. You're 100% correct. And what I wanted to actually say before is something else Amelia said to me. This is not about burning it all down. This is about individuals understanding that for themselves. There's a time for banging down the door, but there's also a time for going through the back door. And what you're talking about right now is really about self-worth. I mean, we learn this helplessness because we think that this is all that we're worth. And once we remember and recognize our self-worth, that's when things really start to change. We want teachers, yes, of course, to be getting the resources and getting the funding and the salaries that they deserve. But if you are not understanding and stepping into your worth enough to ask for a bathroom break when you need it, none of that other stuff is going to change.
I have a question for you from like all of this stuff, and it's with the idea of like burnout especially, and that we're kind of talking about like broader societal aspects as well right now. What would you want to tell society about teachers and the reality of it, especially knowing that like there are parents out there are people out there in general that are saying things about education, but they haven't stepped foot in a classroom in like 40 years, and they haven't like talked to a teacher or talked to anybody in schools in like 40 years?
What do I want to say? That's such a big question. The thing that comes to me right now is to drop your ego and get really curious. Ask questions. We go into these conversations with self-righteousness of we know how it's supposed to be and how it's going to go and how it should go. And the truth is you are full, and by you, I mean all of us, we are all full of our own experiences and inherent biases, and we can't possibly understand the nuance that exists in these school ecosystems, which are different from community to community. And so using these broad strokes to make these grandiose statements of education, sure, education's broken. Absolutely, education is broken. There's so much systemic brokenness that's happening. But what's true in all of this is that organizations don't change until people change. And the only person that you have any agency in changing is yourself. That is it. So when you are finding yourself in a conversation about education or anything, by the way, drop your ego and get really curious and ask good questions.
I like that. Those sort of expressions, right? It is what it is. I'm gonna get super nerdy for a second because I love being super nerdy, and this is my podcast. It's a tauto phrase, right? So something that tautologically defines a term by just saying, well, that's the term, right? But tautological phrases also end conversations. It is what it is. Well, how am I supposed to respond to that? That's no longer a dialogue, right? It's I Uno reverse carded you. Bam! And it drives me up a wall that I actually posted a meme about this on my social media the other day. People are like, I don't like scientists. They know so much. And the guy's like, well, do you think your auto mechanic is arrogant for knowing more about cars than you? Do you think your medical doctor is arrogant for knowing more about the circulatory system than you? Then why is it then scientists? And I would absolutely put educators under scientists because we are educators, right? It is, we just don't like it. And Jake and I, when we met, we worked at a school for gifted kids. And there was this one family, the kid was a frequent flyer in both of our rooms. And at a parent-teacher conference, this dad looked at me, a real titan of industry type. He's like, listen, I don't know a lot about education. I don't know a lot about psychology, but I don't like what you're doing. And I was like, well, you can just go fuck off then, sir. Because I wouldn't say to my surgeon, oh, are you really using that kind of scalpel? What the absolute fuck?
Unfortunately, I think some people think that they have enough experience to tell teachers what to do because they went to school. And that's a beautiful example, though, of having a moment of authenticity. And what an opportunity, invitation for you to drop your ego and say, hey, listen, I had a really bad experience in school. And what's happening right now with my child is making me uncomfortable. Can we talk about that? You're saying the same thing of I don't know anything about this, but I don't like what you're doing. Let's just drop that for a second and release the judgments and get super curious and honest. Because when we start to get honest with ourselves, that's when we start to see different perspectives. It's all the information's out there. It is your perspective is what is creating your perception. And so when we start to ask questions, we widen the aperture.
Just even that, I was like paying attention to my like internal response to that when you phrased the question that way. I was like, that made me want to walk towards you. It's like, yeah, I feel uncomfortable. There's a vulnerability in that. Like when I work with clients in therapy, I always say, like, listen, I'm always going to tell you what we're doing and why. I may not be able to tell you why we're doing it until after the exercise is done, because sometimes the lesson is in the reveal. But like when a kid's like, I don't want to do this, or this feels too hard, I'm like, hey, that's a very human response. I love that from you. And here's what you and I can do to navigate that together. I think there's just a lot of wisdom in that and a lot of best practice, right? But we've got to create environments where people can stop being furious and start being curious, right? Step into that space with vulnerability. I'm assuming that's your next book, is how to get everybody to start doing that, Jen?
Actually, yes. Empowered Educator is coming out next summer. So stay tuned.
Let's go. Shameless plug. Shameless plug.
Yeah, I'll be back next year to promote that book too, I'm sure.
Hell to the yeah on that.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's true.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah. Well, but it's true. Everything that you just said is true. And, which is also one of the reasons why we don't just work with teachers and administrators. We also work with parents, because we're building an ecosystem of people that need vocabulary, that need to understand how to create their own safety in the vulnerability and the authenticity. Because without that, we lose our humanity. I just finished my doctorate degree. I submitted the dissertation. I will tell you that one of the most interesting things that came from that research was about how teachers want to feel more human, which to me was profound in so many ways. And it was heartbreaking, but exciting to me at the same time. Heartbreaking because that was a contrast to what they're feeling right now, but excited about we know what we want. We know we can get there. And we are in the business of raising little humans. Our humanity needs to be center stage all the time.
I love that sentiment so much because, like, as a teacher, like teaching background and somebody with ADHD, like I was always that authentic person in the classroom, and that tended to get me in a little bit of trouble because it was too human, or I was like too much of who I am. So, like, where would you kind of find that balance for people? Like, where would you like encourage them to try to lean more into their humanity while they're teaching a little bit?
That's a great question. And, that experience that you just shared is so many kids' stories. I mean, that's just, as people, we want to see reflections of ourselves. And when you don't see that, that's what creates so much of that dissonance. And so doing that real time as a teacher is creating space for everybody to be authentic. Has to start with you. And the fundamental thing that I teach, like baseline, everything, is how do we make it safe? Because if I'm seeing something in you that is activating me, I'm not going to respond well to whatever it is that you're doing. So it's not about fixing your behavior. It's about how do I reflect on what's happening inside of me so that I can respond and be more curious as to what's going on. Again, keeping humanity first. And so, Matt, you talked about doing your leaf breathing or your leaf exercises. And in your book, shameless plug for your book, everyone needs to go read Dr. Matt's book. You talked about the box breath. That's my go-to all the time also. Hand to heart, 3 rounds of a box breath. But I encourage people to do that at least 4 times a day, no matter what. And the reason we do this 4 times a day is because you have to start to teach your nervous system what it feels like to feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
Because our nervous system doesn't feel safe. We wake up feeling jacked and activated and stressed out. And so the triggers that we experience during the day, especially with our students, are only adding to that. We're already at a 10 and now we're at an 11. Of course, we're going to explode on the kid who's just being authentic, who doesn't understand the assignment. But we're not available for anything other than that. And that's the baseline for me, where I really like to start with everyone that I work with, is start having a dialogue with your body, because that's actually where the information is. Your mind's full of lies. Your mind cannot be trusted, but it is your body that has all the information. And so the more hand to heart, the more you do this exercise, the more you'll start to recognize, oh, that's so interesting. You know, my shoulders were trying to be earrings. My stomach is in knots, like this. I've had this headache. Like, what's going on here? And you can't change something you don't notice. So in addition to, you know, creating safety within your nervous system and safety, feeling safe, you're also raising your awareness so that when it happens in real time, you notice it and it's not something that's beneath your level of consciousness. So that's always where I start.
I mean, that's such a powerful statement because it applies to all the things we're trying to change right now, right? All the unspoken stuff around teachers, all the unspoken stuff about mental health, all the societal problems that we've just sort of, been able to ignore for generations, right? I mean, it's all coming to a head, right? And I think this is a seminal moment in human history because it's like we can keep doing what we've been doing, or we can say it's time to draw attention to our breath. It's time to become aware of these things and position ourselves differently because, I mean, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always gotten, right? I think that you're somebody, Jen, who really was in the stream and then said, wait, I need to go on the bank. I need to do this differently. And, you've called people to you and created this movement because it really, here's my super contemporary pop culture reference. I already talked about Counting Crows, but it's going to get worse. I mean, it feels a little bit like the Matrix, right? It feels a little bit like your Trinity, right? And you're just like,
I'll take that. Forget Peter Pan. I am Trinity.
We could have gone Tinkerbell. That was a little too on the nose. No, Trinity is exceptionally more badass, and we're here for it.
Yes. Get my leather pants. Yes.
We don't usually have a dress code on the podcast, but you know what? For you, we
yeah. Today. That's why you're going to invite me back.
Yeah. Oh no.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. I think there's so much time. I know. There is so much time that we spend pointing fingers, blaming everything and everyone else and the systems and society, and we're just screaming out into the void, hoping someone's going to come listen to us. The truth is, nobody's coming to save you. Nobody's coming to save you. And while that feels maybe a little disappointing for me, that is the best news ever because I can stop waiting. I can actually do this myself. And real change, we're talking like revolution, happens one person at a time, looking within and reclaiming their agency, period. And it has to start biologically with your breath, the most basic things. And is breathing going to change the world? No. But if we can't even think clearly to have a cohesive thought or a productive conversation, then nothing will ever change.
And part of the reason that teachers have this incredible bargaining power, right? They're at the choke point between society needs you to do a thing and nobody else can do the thing, but also we're going to underpay you. Like, because if you can keep people so stressed out, right? And in that hypervigilant and hyperventilation, right? If we're talking about the biology of it, right? Then that is a stressed out person is an easy person to redirect. It's an easy person to shift off, right? And what you were saying before, Jen, made me think of my own COVID story, right? So during COVID, I had a 2-year-old and then we had an infant. So our son was born in June 2020 and I had just quit my job and my wife had really terrible postpartum depression. And it's COVID, like you said, no one's coming to save us. They would have had they been able to, but there were lots of reasons why they couldn't. So I fell into this headspace of I would wake up at a 93, right? If I'm going to melt down at 100, I would wake up at a 93 in the morning and know as long as everything went perfectly, I'd be okay. But gosh, a 2-year-old and an infant are not exactly on anybody's schedules. Depression doesn't follow anybody's schedule, right? And it would get to the point where like I would be walking around the house doing things, sobbing, right? Because I'm like, well, I didn't schedule time for a cry. So I'm just gonna do the thing. And like it wasn't until I asked for help, it wasn't until that I put my hand up and said, I can't keep doing this. But the term for that in the field is invisible perfectionism. And I mean, how many of us, educators, mental health professionals, parents, and if you're like the two of us and you happen to be all three, then you're feeling three times the version of that. It's just like as long as this impossible schedule will work, as long as I do everything perfectly, superhumanly, to go back to what we were saying before. And then when that fails, we think it's a failure of self, not a failure of system.
Yes, 100%. And if you think that's great and want to pass that on to your kids, keep doing what you're doing. And if you're feeling like this doesn't really feel really good and I would love for something different for my children, that's when things need to start with you. And recognizing, okay, this is really interesting. I wake up at a 93. This is really interesting. Every time something goes wrong, I blame myself and the shitty committee in my head goes bonkers. This is so interesting. And if you're noticing my language, it is collecting data. It's not judgmental. Oh, here I go again, doing the thing that I always do, and I spiral out. I'm at a 93. No, this is so interesting. What are my tools? What are my tools? And, going within does not mean in isolation. Going within does not mean finding your community. In fact, it means that you get to cultivate the support and the community that you authentically desire, not the community that you think you're supposed to have. And none of that happens until you go within first. The perfectionism as a, recovering people pleasing perfectionist musician. I mean, come on. Like, I love listening to your stories about improv, Matt, because that was something that I always had fun with, but never made the bridge to my real life until, love this story, until I was teaching modern band. And I studied, vocal performance and music education at the college. I was a trained soprano, and we read music, and I was great at emotional expression that I could mimic, that I could, create from my own past experiences, but nothing that I could make up on the spot. That was always very uncomfortable for me. But when I was teaching modern band, I had to learn how to play guitar. I taught myself how to play bass, taught myself how to play drum kit. I loved every minute of it. And one time, one of the kids in my class, their bass player was out sick. And they're like, hey, Mr. Rafferty, you think you can play bass for us? We're going to do a little jam sesh. And I never say no. And I'm thinking to myself, like, oh God, I'm gonna like jam. What? I'm not cool enough to jam. And so I went into the band room where they were practicing, and I had my first jam session with these like 16 and 17-year-old kids. And it was so liberating. I cannot even explain. It was as if there were these shield and armor that were on me that started to melt away, that I could feel. I mean, I get emotional just thinking about this. I could feel it just like peeling off of my skin. And it was so freeing, because being in that environment wasn't about getting it right. It had nothing to do with being perfect. It was about listening and responding, and most importantly, having fun. And look, the truth is, nobody gets out of here alive. That's real. There is a finite amount of time that you are here on this earth. So if we're not feeling the way that we want to feel for the majority of that time, what the fuck are we doing here?
It's like a perfect sentiment, honestly.
I mean, that might have been the best. And, Jen, I don't know how much you were watching Jake as you were speaking.
Oh, I see that face in the background.
Jake, do you want to tell her why your face was exploding during that story?
Yeah, it's so I've been playing drums for I guess like 20 years now, weirdly enough. I'm old now. But I've been playing drums, started with bass, went to drums, and like the improv, especially as a drummer, is like everything. I think for live shows especially, like 40%, 35% of what I do is improv in a sense. And I would hate it if it was just 100% like you have to play exactly what's written all the way through every single time, the same dynamics, same accents, same everything. It's just less fun. It's less enjoyable. It's less like human, as you like, if you will.
Yeah, it's different. You know, I will say for me, as being trained as a classical singer, I learned so much, and there's so much value in that. But I was always envious of the folks who learned music by ear alone, who never claimed to be a musician. Ella Fitzgerald said she wasn't a musician. Like, are you kidding me?
Right? Come
And
on.
right? She was on, I think, like the Johnny Carson show or something, said like, oh, I'm not a musician. I can't read music was what she said, which is, I hear that a lot. But the ability to play or sing from your heart and to move through life that way without the scripts that we make for ourselves, you know, is so exciting. And for someone who has experienced trauma, for someone who is neurodiverse, for someone who feels as if people pleasing and perfectionism is part of their DNA, not knowing what's going to happen next means that you need to release and relinquish control, which you never had in the first place. Control is an illusion. You've never had control, because even when you know all of the notes and you step out on stage, you still never know what's going to happen. And that fear is what keeps us paralyzed. It's what keeps us small. It's what keeps us the same. And when you recognize that smallness, that sameness is coming from your brain, doing an awesome job, by the way, just trying to keep you alive, you recognize that you're not your brain, you're not your fear, you're the person who has a brain, who is experiencing fear. And when you start to objectify that, you get to start to play with it and have communication. All of the crazy things that I've done from that moment that I shared with you, where I started this journey of Empowered Educator that led me to the TED Talk, that led me to being on crazy stages and traveling and being in Forbes and now writing this book. I am no longer the person who I was 5 years ago, sitting on my couch, sobbing her eyes out because she just resigned from a job that she loved and had no idea what's going to happen next. But, and I'm using but very intentionally here, that fear doesn't go away. It's biology. But I can start to anticipate it. I know when she's coming and she's like, hey, Jen, who do you think you are? Who do you think you are speaking on this stage? Right. Who's going to read this? Who cares what you have to say? I know she's coming. And so when I can recognize it, I can say, hey, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, fear. I know you're doing your job and I appreciate you so much. And I don't actually need you right now. And I make it safe. And I do the slew of other exercises that I teach also, because I practice everything I teach. And then I do the thing. That's how this works.
You're just so fucking awesome. I just can't. Like, it's like all the quippy one-liners I had back or shared stories. I was like, nah, man, we're gonna let that sit, because that was, when someone says it better than you, you shut up and let them hold the moment. So bravo, you. Yeah. See, I didn't undersell this one.
Not
right.
at all.
This
not
is,
even close.
She really just is that awesome.
Oh, good. I'm glad I live up to my reputation. Although I'll tell you, as a former people pleaser, it would be okay if I didn't.
Yeah. Right.
That's growth.
Oh my gosh. That is growth.
That's right. That's right.
A couple years ago, I spoke at my my high school theater teacher's retirement, and I did a little talk on like, thank you for holding space for bad actors. Right? Like she never made anybody audition. Like, you auditioned for the leads, the roles, but like if you showed up, you could be in the ensemble. Right? And what a powerful thing that was for someone like me, who showed up because their friend said you should do this, and they're like, have you prepared a side? I was like, what's a side? Do you know the choreography? I'm like, there's dance. Like, I was a hunk of clay, but like holding space for someone and, organically playing to their strengths and creating a space for that. It almost didn't matter that I was a bad actor. It almost didn't matter that I couldn't sing, because you can do so much more from a place of safety, right? if it's like, if you don't nail this choreography, you're out of the fucking show, then I'm going to be tight and anxious and, and I'm going to be desperate to please them and not invest that energy in my own journey to do the best damn job I could. And afterwards, Miss Sweeney, and Miss Sweeney, if you're listening to this, hi, we love you. She's like, I appreciate everything you said, but she's like, you're also thinking about it the wrong way. She's like, you compared yourself to the people who weren't you because they had been in acting classes since they were 6. They had been in private voice lessons. They had been in dance. She's like, you came in with none of that. And look what you accomplished from a place of starting from 0, and compare that to a place of all people started at 10. And yeah, they maybe have gotten to 50, but they started at 10. You started at 0 and got to 25. She's like, in your own way, that's more impressive. And I was like, you're crying. Shut up. I could never cry on cue on stage, but now I can. So
just think back to that little speech from her every time.
It's so dusty in my basement right now. It's so weird.
Yeah, it's so weird.
Yeah.
Right. Give us all your tears. Tears don't scare me.
They're my therapy lifeblood, right? I mean, like we're all
right. Uh-huh.
So, Jen, I'm going to ask you a different sort of question just because
Sure.
I get a lot of people who ask, how do I do what you're doing? How do I get on those stages? How do I be someone that someone calls and says, I'm putting you on a plane and flying you to this place and giving you a fancy microphone and talk to us, tell your story? There's a lot of fear about putting yourself out there. There's a lot of fear about public speaking. What would be your advice to people who are trying to get to where you and I have gotten to in terms of telling our stories?
I think there's 2 things. I'm going to repeat a sentiment that you said that I wrote down that I absolutely loved. You can do so much more from a place of safety. And while you were so lucky to have a teacher to foster a safe environment, again, you don't have to wait for somebody else to do that either. You get to do this yourself. And so having that conversation with your fear and creating safety are completely connected. Those 2 things need to happen. And the other thing I'll say is that the world needs you to tell your story. The world needs you to be visible. The only person that can be an expert in your story is you. And that's truly what the world needs right now, is everyone to wake up to their own sense of self-worth and their voice. What we do here at Empowered Educator, and my mission underneath all of it, is actually not anything different than what I used to do in the classroom. In the classroom, I would inspire people to discover their voice. And that is exactly what I do now. I just do it in a little bit of a different way. My what is different, but that why is still very much the same. And when you step into that light, when you step into your authenticity, everybody learns. I just read somewhere in a book recently, it really struck me, what's personal is universal. And when you can speak your truth, when you speak your experience, there are people that need to hear it. They're waiting for you to hear it. And sometimes it feels like, this isn't going to work. What am I doing? I should just stop. And I say this kind of jokingly because being an entrepreneur, it feels like that often. It's quite a roller coaster of that. No matter how big or how good you get at the thing, that's the fear talking and the ego and your past experiences becoming very loud. And what you get to choose to do is keep going. Keep going. Don't stop. Keep going. We need you to keep going.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. The more speakers I talk to, you'd think that there are only so many stages and only so many microphones and only so many keynote slots. You think that people would be very cutthroat. And I have found the exact opposite experience. People are like, oh man, you're great at this. You should be speaking on these stages. You should talk to this person. And I think it's because, to absolutely amplify what you said, Jen, is that what's personal is universal, right? Because there's someone in that audience who's thinking like siloed, like no one else has ever felt this way. And then you get up there and you're brave and vulnerable and somebody goes, wait, what? Like the very first time I talked about imposter syndrome, this woman raised her hand and she was like, I'm sorry. I'm just sorry. Other people feel like this? there's like 80 people in the room. I was like, how many of us have ever felt like this? And like 90% of the people raised their hands. And I was like, you're not alone. And then she sobbed for a while. And we like held space for that moment. And it was like, yeah, okay, there is really something to this. And all of us have a story to tell. And it doesn't always have to be on stage, right? Blog or write a book or do a YouTube channel. I mean, like, but people need to hear your story because it's going to help so many more people than you think.
1,000%. And I think this circles back to what we were saying earlier about putting humanity first. It's getting better now. Despite all of the craziness that's happening in the world in this very moment, we live in a really cool time where there's a lot of connectedness and availability for visibility. And we have an opportunity here to, uncover the veil about our emotional experience in this lifetime. As human beings, one of our greatest gifts is our emotional capacity, and it's also one of the most undernourished. And what an opportunity we have, an invitation for you to get up and share your story so that we can connect to each other's humanity in this way and create these open conversations where vulnerability is normal, where crying is normal, where getting angry and smashing a pool noodle on the wall for a little while to get it out is normal. These are the things that we often hide away and we feel so much shame about and create silos and isolation for ourselves. You asked me this earlier too. Where does your authenticity come from? It's getting back to who am I and who do I want to be? And constantly creating that bridge, which continues to grow every day. Who I was yesterday is not who I am today, and is definitely not who I'm going to be tomorrow. And so making that decision of who do I want to be today? How I want to show up today? What is my story that I want to share today? Even if it's at the dinner table with my kids. It's very powerful, and it's a conscious choice, not a subconscious default autopilot, which is what so many of us are going on these days. Keeping moments like the one that you just described in the forefront in all of the spaces we go in is I think one of the most beautiful things we can do.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, we can and maybe even should keep talking to you, but we have to wrap up the episode at some point. So, Jen, we're gonna position into our final questions. Jake, why don't you take the lead on this one?
I would love to.
Yeah, I thought you would.
Love asking this question, especially to teachers. But what's your favorite word and why?
Oh my gosh. What's my favorite word and why? I'm going to tell you the first word that comes to mind, and it's been my favorite word since I was a kid. I love the word luxuriously. I love the way it feels in my mouth. I love the feelings that it incites in my body. And especially now being older, I love doing things as luxuriously as possible. I mean, even, I like the fancy soaps. When I got to a certain point in my career, I was like, you know what? I don't want ivory anymore. I want the luxurious lavender with the little coffee grinds that feels good on my skin. I like the special creamer in my coffee. I like doing everything, I think, with that idea of being luxurious.
And it's a fancy sounding word too. Just saying.
Isn't it?
You said it so that was like a cat stretching in the sun. I mean, luxurious. I mean,
I love that word.
oh, I could see like Zach Posen saying that on Project Runway. Like it was, yes, fabulous. All right. Jen, if you could have one superhero on speed dial, who would it be and why?
Oh, that's a great question too. Well, you know how I feel about superheroes. However, I will make an exception this one time for some superhero that I truly love. This also harkens back to my childhood. And that would be Sailor Moon.
Oh.
Yeah, Sailor Moon. She was a fucking rock star and did great in school and saved the world several times over and had an awesome group of friends.
And fashion sense. Awesome fashion sense too.
Such a good fashion sense. Fabulous. It was luxurious.
Yeah, I remember waking up at like 6 a.m. all
6
the
o'clock in the
time.
morning. That's right. I would wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and my friends and I would watch Sailor Moon,
hmm
and then we would talk about it at school that day. Yep.
I can't believe we haven't had Sailor Moon yet. Like, I'm actually like shocked this is the first person who has mentioned Sailor Moon. Wow. All right. Fabulous answer. Gold star, no notes. Jen, you are a rocket ship to the moon here, to the Sailor Moon. That's right. Tell us, what do you want our listeners to take away from having heard you speak today?
That's such a juicy question. The thing that I keep on my desk that to me is one of the most potent things that I get to remember every day is that enough is a decision, not an amount. And the only person that gets to decide whether or not it's enough is you.
Well, we definitely have our tagline for this episode and probably my new life philosophy. So thanks for that, Jen. Dr. Rafferty.
Invoices now.
Excellent. Very good. Very good. Because you are not a superhero in the sense that you have many powers, but you do get paid, and that's important. So, Jen, where can people track you down? Like, if they want to jump on the Jen Rafferty train, where would they find you?
Yeah, Jen Rafferty train is an awesome train to be on. And Instagram, it's Jen Rafferty _ or at Empowered Educator _ official. Facebook, we've got this awesome Empowered Educator faculty room. And of course, my website, empowerededucator.com/resources is a cool place to go to find all sorts of fantastic tools and strategies for you to use and start your journey or continue your journey. Come on down.
All of those will be in the show notes too, just for everybody listening.
Well, you are amazing. I am happy to count you as a colleague and even happier to count you as a friend. So, Jen, you're just a terrific person. Welcome to the Doctor Club. We will send you your key and your packet. It's very cool. I can't wait for your book. I can't wait to just see all the great stuff you keep doing. So we're honored to have you here, and thank you for sharing your wisdom and journey with us.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be here, and right back at you. All of those things, I feel very much the same.
So for all of us here at Nerding Out on Neurodiversity, thank you for trusting us with your time today. I hope you learned. I hope you laughed. If you liked me, it got a little dusty. That's pretty par for the course around here. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Nerding Out on Neurodiversity is brought to you by Dr. Matt Zakreski and the team at the Neurodiversity Collective. To learn more about the Neurodiversity Collective or to be a guest on the podcast, please visit our website at www.theneurodiversitycollective.com/podcast. Audio and production by Jake Noonan. Show your support by subscribing, leaving a 5-star review, and telling your friends about us. Our Instagram and social media handles are at #NoonPodcast, NOON podcast. Your support is appreciated and keeps us going. All discussions presented on this podcast are strictly for informational purposes, awareness, and understanding. The advice presented is not and should not be considered to be therapeutic in nature. If you have any mental health questions, please contact your provider. All rights reserved.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.